5 years ago when Colorado and Washington became the first two recreational states. We actually waited 9 months to hear back from the Department of Justice as to whether we were going to be able to move forward or not. So you think about anxiety today, I can tell you that we were about ready to issue licenses to our first growers and processors and weren't sure whether we were going to be able to do that. Constant discussions with the U.S. attorneys in Washington and the Department of Justice, and at that time, the Obama administration, but it took 9 months before they issued what you all know as the Cole Memorandum, which really outlined 8 enforcement priorities, and they really broke up into 3 areas. And we really wrote all of our regulations, like Colorado, to adhere to those enforcement priorities. 1, how are you going to keep it out of the hands of kids, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about compliance checks. Coincidentally, I actually kind of had read some of the stories about compliance checks in Oregon, and while everyone was concerned, what I realized is we went through that same process ourselves. You don't get good compliance checks unless you do compliance. So what was our rate when we started? It was about the same as it was in Oregon. As we continue to do compliance, we got a higher compliance rate. Today, between 92 and 96% youth compliance rate, much better than it is for alcohol. And why better? Because we only have 500 retailers in the state, and we have thousands of alcohol retailers. So we're able to go there and do the compliance checks. So while I know people were excited about the compliance rate not being high, we had that experience ourselves. The reality is, if you don't do compliance, people aren't compliant. Once you do compliance, you'll quickly see in the next 6 months to a year that compliance rate rise. Number 2 from the Cole Memorandum, how are you going to keep product from being diverted out of your state? So like Colorado, and maybe more so, because Washington is much more difficult and restrictive with respect to our regulations, we put together a traceability system like everyone else. That seed to sell system is the means by which we track product from within all 3 tiers. And number 3, how are you going to keep cartels, criminals, gangs from being involved in this as your licensees? And so we vet. So a little history, and I can remember how the cannabis industry in Washington thought, what the hell are you giving this to the Liquor Control Board for Christ's sakes? You know, we don't want them to be our regulator. They're too strict. Well, that's exactly what the author of the initiative intended. She knew that it was going to be difficult to pass this in Washington, so she actually looked at who's out there regulating a drug today, and it was the Liquor Control Board. And so whether people like that or not, they didn't come to us and ask us if we wanted to be the regulator, I can tell you that. But that was something that was modeled after the alcohol beverage law coming out of Prohibition, believe it or not. She actually looked at what was being done. That's why, unlike the other 7 states, we're not vertically integrated. And if you're from Washington, you know how difficult that was for those that were in the medical marketplace who said, what, I can't be vertically integrated? That's the way I run this thing that I'm doing. And so it took 2 years of the legislature before that integration occurred, where medical and recreational in our state are under one system. But that whole vetting system that we do for licensure, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, is one of the reasons why we have banking in Washington. We have 3 credit unions and 3 state chartered banks that are providing banking to the industry. And in fact, so well that 95% of the excise tax that we collect is collected in a means other than cash. And I can tell you for many of the other states, it's more problematic. And I'll talk in more detail about why that's the case. But
I love it.